We are we are live here Friday morning, September 9th. We are doing these calls every week just to discuss aquatics and let people be able to share ideas and collaborate. I've been fortunate to get this together, and we've had a pretty core group that jumps in and out where they can. I know one of our participants will jump in here shortly. Chelsea had to go give a lifeguard a break. I've got a couple questions to talk about to start off with, and I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive into talking about burnout. I've seen a lot of posts about it. It's the end of summer, and I think this year it's a lot more prevalent. This is, I think, the first back to normal summer that a lot of us have experienced, and so I've got some thoughts and just love to kind of have everyone share about it, and then we'll go from there. I know there's also been interest in going a little bit more of a deep dive in diversity and inclusion training. So I'm going to go ahead and try to reach out and schedule a couple people that I think are pretty good experts in leading the industry on some of that stuff. And we're going to try to get that a little more announced in advance. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm still working on, long-term schedule. Is Friday the most sustainable time for this or not? And so more to follow on that. But with that, I've got the first question that came in was asking about high combined chlorine issues. So this facility has, a pretty substantially large, high attendance indoor water park with a wave pool, and they were having some combined chlorine issues where they were getting up, over 1.4, 1.6 parts per million. And a new health inspector came in and said, you guys can't operate, and said, you got to shut down. They backwashed the ever living snot out of the pool and put in a bunch of fresh water, got the combined chlorines down. Pool was closed for the rest of the day, and then came in the next morning and the combined chlorines were back up again. So, a couple thoughts I had on it. I'd love to hear if anybody on the panel has ideas. I thought maybe the utility provider had changed maybe where they're drawing water from or how they're doing treatment. So they might use a combined chlorine like product in the water treatment system. I don't know if anybody else has had experience with that at all.
My first thing would be to test the water out of the tap. First thing to do, check that, see where you're at. And if you are having combined coming out, that's something that you need to let the state know.
Right.
Good.
And then the other thought I had, I told them that, maybe check and see if there's anywhere to pull a sample from downstream of your UV unit to verify it's working. It's kind of a weird thing to think about of like, how would I get because typically we put our sample lines before we do all of our chemical treatment, but if there's a place to pull a water sample after it's been exposed to the UV light and see if that's varying from what you're getting in the water or at your chemical controller, that could show if maybe the UV is not actually, we can't like magically see them in real time working. It's like the light's on and the sensor says it's working, but I've had sensors go bad on them before. I've had, all sorts of other issues. So that was another idea I had for them. And then, given that it's a wave pool, I recommended, well, if you're still having issues, potentially overnight when you don't have bather load, leave the waves on and leave your air handling system ramped up to hopefully maybe agitate some of those combines out and purge them from the building. Short of that, I don't know. I know of one facility that struggled with that before. It was an outdoor facility in Central Oregon at a, private community, and they struggled with combined chlorine so bad they were, questioning, is their bodies hid in the surge tank or something, because they just could never get it under control. So I don't know if any of you have had experience with that, and kind of what you've looked at with combined chlorines and dealing with them.
Well, I know that the organic compounds don't break down.
Mm-hmm.
But usually it's a small fraction of the total combined, usually. So, right. Unfortunately, there's not really a good way to measure that to my knowledge, but yeah, that's an interesting one. I'd be curious to know, like, see what their they're maintaining their chlorine levels at, because in theory, the UV light is just there to aid. Now, I could possibly see an issue where if they're running their chlorine really fairly low, like at a 1.5 or a 1, just really low, and that UV is not working, you can run into that issue. But if their chlorine's around a 3 or 4, I don't see that gas off should be occurring.
Right. That was kind of my thoughts too. So I felt fortunate to be able to brainstorm with him and see what we could figure out. So, all right. We had another question about order of operations for restarting pools. Melissa posted this on the group, and so I figured we'd just toss it out. When you're refilling your pool, what range and what do you start addressing first, and how do you do it? I know for me, generally, I'm trying to get my pH and alkalinity in range. I use CO2, so I here where I'm at, and most of the facilities I've been at have low alkalinity source water. So we generally start with getting our chemical controller online as we're refilling. At the point where I can start running my circulation system, even though I'm still refilling.
Yep.
I don't worry about chlorine right away. I let the pH run for a little bit, and then figure out what my dosage is going to be for adding sodium bicarb to get the alkalinity close, and then I start adding chlorine. Obviously, if I'm in a rush on a quick turnaround, I'm going to be doing multiple things at once. But ideally, we're going to address alkalinity, pH, get our disinfectant level in check, and then adjust our calcium hardness and cyanuric acid if it's an outdoor pool. So, any other thoughts or experiences with those? Looks like Kyle had to take a call. Christina, you're warm because you're primarily working now at a smaller facility that it's warmer water. Is that correct?
I was. We had to shut down because of COVID.
Oh no.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
we had to close because it was not. We didn't own the building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and our only financial supply was donations.
Oh,
Grant,
okay.
and admissions, and it's a very, very small pool. So during
Right.
COVID, when we reopened, we could only have 5 people at a time in the facility.
Yeah.
That was just 2 more than what staff I had to have on.
Yeah, that doesn't quite pencil out unless you're
It
doing.
did not pencil out.
I don't think in your area there's enough high dollar people that you could charge have enough clientele that would want that private experience to be able to operate.
Yeah.
I know some facilities are still doing, lap lane reservations where they have enough economic buy-in to be able to run those. We aren't here. I mean, we're a public facility. We've been trying to just piece things together and get back to normal. I know I'd like to explore maybe having a lane that's available for rental at any point, because we've got that person that's willing to pay.
Right.
And oftentimes what happens is the pool's empty when they come in anyways. They're just, they have enough disposable income paired with their tastes, paired with when they want to swim, that, yeah, if you want to rent, make sure you have an empty lane for you whenever you come in and you want to pay top dollar for it. There's some times of the day we could possibly do that.
I think it makes sense. It just gives that option out there, and then if you can do it, and like Melissa's kept up with it, it's it scratches that itch, so to speak. It isn't a flat no to somebody.
Right. And it's not something that, oftentimes if you have enough capacity, I think is the big thing, that you have enough capacity for, who's your primary customer, like for, where I'm at, it's a city. Do we have enough program offerings that align with what the city wants versus what, the city leadership and the community has voiced, this is what we want. And if we have, some margins on the excess, we definitely want to capitalize on it, because we already have staff there. We already have the pool open. We're not reducing accessibility. So if somebody wants to pay more to jump in and do that, great.
Yeah.
So, We're coming into fall. And so there was a question about fall events at your pools and different events that you do at, for programming in the fall to capitalize on other, um, other holiday themes and stuff. Like here at this facility, we've done like a spooky splash or like a harvest party pool. We'll borrow lights from our theater department and, can't bring in like a fog machine as fun as it would be, but we'll do, lights and music and decorations and kind of make it the haunted pool theme. Not too scary, but to get people there. And then we've historically done a 5K run and promote Brenda to panelist, where that's based out of our pool on Thanksgiving Day. We call it a turkey trot. I know there's other facilities also will do similar ones. We would like to do more fall events, but we also end up hosting water polo championships. And we have 3 swim teams that participate out of our pool. So it's kind of hard to get more programmed in, especially in the fall when staffing tends to start to ramp down a little bit. So yeah, how about any other fall program ideas from you guys?
I'm kind of treading water at the moment, literally.
In the past, I mean, at one point when I was at River Road, we did an amazing spooky house thing, and spent hours and hours and hours pulling it together. And we hired a scuba diver. One of our staff was a scuba diver, so they stayed in the water the whole night just to be able to be the observer underneath the water. It was underwater hockey, underwater guarding. Okay.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool. And we did it several years in a row. But then what I think, part of it is they don't come to swim if they're in costume. So my thought is, and like you're a city or whatever, if you can't do it yourself at your facility because it isn't practical, then you get all about promoting an event that is happening. So like if the city's putting on a spooky house in the community room, and that's what we did with River Road, then we were all behind making sure that everybody that came in the pool knew that that was going to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's promoting, but it just didn't have to happen in the pool itself. And that's where I kind of get a question a little bit, about it in terms, and I know there's also like the water fitness staff got totally excited about it and did challenges with pumpkins because they float.
Yeah.
So they had to swim pumpkins across the pool and things like that, or wear funny hats, that kind of stuff. But adding the water in it does add an element of, you have to be pretty, you have to weigh it out. If you're drawing people in and they're really enjoying it, or if you're doing all that work and effort, and is it panning out for you? And is there a better event that you can promote?
Yeah.
My thoughts.
It's great. One other event that we do typically in the fall and winter, we have the full-size rescue mannequins. And so we do the similar to the Elf on the Shelf of the mannequin goes around the facility and gets into shenanigans. And it's a fun thing that we've been able to post on our social media in the past.
That's fun.
You got to be careful though, because then what ends up happening is staff start getting creative and like, oh, I'm going to scare somebody with the mannequin. And so like I came in one morning, the mannequin was sitting in my chair and it was turned just right when I walked in expecting it to, dark and open up the door and there's a, startle. They explained to me that, yeah, that was getting back at you because I left the mannequin. We were tearing down from a water polo match and setting up from it. I had to move the mannequin away. And so I just left it in the storage room on the floor and the staff member walked in and saw it and scared them. So they had to get me back. So any other ideas for fall or winter events that you guys do? I know pumpkin splashes and stuff and like pumpkin races are a fun one with swim teams and swim lesson kids. All right. Another question that was posed was how far out do you create your staff schedules? We've talked about scheduling platforms. We've talked about kind of processes there, but like when you create a schedule, are you publishing a week ahead? Are you publishing 5 weeks ahead, 10 weeks ahead? what are your practices?
I do 4
4?
month. Sometimes it's 5. I go by the month.
And how early before the month starts are you trying to get that out? I mean, obviously we're all crazy busy, but
Yeah.
how
So let's say the next schedule starts. So my schedule starts Monday through Sunday.
Mhm.
So I am usually having that next month's schedule out the prior Tuesday. So they have at least 5 to 6 days
Mhm.
to get um, to see the schedule and get it on their calendars, because I give them the entire month of or whatever the month is, to get their unavailability into the app that I use. And I say,
Right.
okay, deadlines here, unavailabilities due. I'm going to be putting out the first week's schedule Tuesday. And then sometimes I work on the rest of the weeks on Wednesday and Thursday.
Mhm. Okay. Chelsea, what do you guys do for schedule? How far out are you scheduling? Oh,
You're muted.
I think I can unmute you. Can I? Nope, not hearing you. So, well, while you're working on that, I will go ahead and I'll share what we did. We just published yesterday, and it was a train wreck. So we went through, and we're published through the first week of November. We run Sunday to Saturday, so we published out. Oh, I should be able to see it through November 5th, and so it's a struggle. It starts next week. We wanted to get it out earlier this week, but it just could not happen with people still figuring out their school fall schedules. We usually try to do like 10 weeks at a time, but this year the schools changed their schedules so much. Like our high schools here in Corvallis are like these weird rotating days that we haven't even been able to figure out with our swim coaches when we can get their practice schedules in. Most of our programming is going to be pretty consistent, but with staffing, it's going to be a little bit tricky to figure out. So we went ahead and said, nope, we're going to publish through what we know, get our first couple big events under our belt. And then I'm hoping by the 1st of October to be able to publish through the rest of the calendar year and the winter break. So that's what I've got to say about
so
that.
we use the app called Sling.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
We use the app called Sling, and my marketing director actually does all of our scheduling for us because she schedules people across all the different departments. So I have a lifeguard, for example, that she is also going to be working the front desk today.
Yeah.
So we pull that. So she would have put out on Monday, she would have put out next week's schedule. So we're just playing it a week at a time. We're trying to encourage kids, especially these teenagers, to get in there ahead of time and put in all of their school events, all of their, doctor's appointments, et cetera. And the way Sling works is you can put in unavailability, but then the things that aren't your regular unavailability are also your individual time off requests. So I have a doctor's appointment here. Can I have that day off or that time off for that doctor's appointment? And then when she goes into schedule, it shows that person is unavailable, that she can't put that person in there. So that's how she plays it. She just wants to know the Sunday before the next scheduling week.
Yeah. We, with the 10-week schedule or 5-week schedule, we let people, if they submit a time off request before we publish the schedule for our casual staff, instantly approved. No questions asked. Once we publish the schedule, we give them about a 2-day grace period to say, hey, I looked at this, like my schedule, I guess I didn't realize that like one person, their school schedule went 30 minutes longer. There was a shift. You've got a couple days to let us know. We will definitely bend over backwards to work with you. But once that schedule is published, if it's basically, you've got to find a sub at that point. And I think that's worked pretty well. They can put in with our system if they want to plan for, Avengers 5 coming out in 2.5 years and they want to book those dates out, go ahead, put it in as a time off request. It's going to get approved and you're not going to have to deal with it. I've also tried to be the kind coordinator and be like, hey, we're getting ready to start scheduling. I just saw you bought Comic-Con tickets for 4 months from now, and that's going to fall in our next schedule. You should make sure you put in your time off request, when they're talking about that stuff. So I don't know if that personal touch helps. We really try to set them up for success. Obviously, we've got call-ins and everything else that we deal with, but I think the better we've been able to communicate, it's gone a lot better. So. Any other thoughts on scheduling before we jump on to the next topic?
The thing that I'm just wondering, like when we sit here, and I know you're very frustrated without staff, but I wonder if there's any opportunities to meet with some of the people that hire for their businesses, like, for example, let's say McDonald's, the franchise owner. I mean, if there's any way to do a collaborative thing with them, just to be able to be educated on how they're having success doing it. And, thinking about, because really we kind of set these kids up for failure if they can get everything off all the time, because in the real world jobs, my sister puts hers in, like everybody has to put them in January, and that's it. Vacations. And that still exists out there. Yeah. But I'm just wondering if there is a way to do that, to just even have, I don't know, offer them a promotion for the McDonald's for a week in the facility, if they would sit down with you and share how they're making it happen.
No, I like that. That's a really good idea. I think I've observed that I think they're hurting for scheduling just as much as we are. And I don't know, that actually ties in. I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute when we talk about burnout. But I'm just curious to see what people are successful with, and maybe they make it work some other way. Maybe we're missing the boat. Maybe they have some. I don't know. That's
McDonald's and Sisters, which Sisters in Oregon is a very big tourist area, and they've got to have the coverage. And I saw the sign there right in the dining room about, if you work weekends, it's this rate. If you want to be management, you're this rate. If you work weekends, there's a premium on it.
Right.
You work evenings, there's a premium on it. And then the ideal banker hours, 8 to 5.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept. To do that. I know that with pay equity and all those other things, that gets in the way in terms of being able to do that. But
we were able to get a program here for early mornings where there is an incentive program, because we have to be very particular with the language from our organization. And I don't want to sound disparaging about that. There's a lot of variables, because we have 3 collective bargaining units here. We're a public agency. And so certain things, from a practical standpoint, it's kind of like a shift differential. If you work at this shift, these hours, you get paid an extra, what did we pay? We pay an extra $100 for every 50 hours worked, was what we were able to get approved. So it's essentially a $2 an hour bonus to work those opening shifts. But for the pilot program, we had to, the way we had to structure it to get it through was work these hours, get an extra payment. Work these hours, get an extra payment. And then when we run payroll, we have to just calculate the hours that those folks fall into. So then our payroll is able to just add in that extra, like they would add in a mileage reimbursement or something like that. So is there anybody else on the call that with their programs are doing incentive pay for lifeguards, swim instructors, anything like that?
Joe, this is Brenda for El Paso, Texas. Hi. And just for the scheduling, we go every 2 weeks. I still notice we still have some challenges with the morning schedules, but we were able to get it approved with the city or city council approve an increase of salary for the lifeguards. So I think now they're 14 something. for the lifeguards, and then shift differential if they work the early shift, which is 4:45 in the morning to 8 o'clock a.m. So, but it's not a lot. It's like 10, 15 cents, something like that. But it will add up with time if they're continuously working those morning shifts. Then I have about 108.4, which is less than part-time staff. So they have no benefits, no nothing. And then I'll be converting some positions to 0.5. So what we're working with my team is those part-time positions, they have to have the commitment when they come on board that they have to be available to the shifts that we assign, either the early morning or the late shift, but they have to be available and they have to commit to those 20 hours. Once they pass probation, 6 months, they'll accumulate vacation and sick leave. So then they will have to be able to take that time off. But it's gonna be probably like about looking at the staffing, because I have to delete some positions, and then I'm working with the math of all that, which is a little bit complicated. Probably it's gonna be about 40 positions like that. So I'll still have 108 positions, which is they're gonna be the 16 hours. Some are working more than that because they're available, and others they work like a day here and there, or they cover when somebody cannot make it to a shift. They have their group me, and they're trying to find the coverage. So that's how we do it. And then for our instructors, I started something new since I come over from a recreation division, like working in another division, and the staffing was more a different programming, a little bit different. So I'm able to use independent contracts for leisure instruction. So I was able, we already started Aqua Zumba at one of our places, and we did an independent contract for that. So we're gonna be adding a couple more of those. And then I have a couple WSI that can teach Learn to Swim. So we're gonna be using them as independent contractors. If they don't want a lifeguard, they just wanna teach, then I'll be using those type of contracts. So they're committed to the contract. That's what they say. If they sign the contract Monday, Wednesday, teaching 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., that's what the only thing they're gonna be doing. So, and I was able to pay them a little bit higher, but it's only instruction time.
Right.
That's it. So that's what I do in El Paso.
Thank you. I know. I think the independent contractor. I've always had some heartburn over, especially like with water fitness in a lot of organizations. Water fitness instructors are paid pretty low rates compared to land fitness instructors, who will be contractors and everything else. But I also know where I'm at, the independent contractor laws in Oregon, I know, are pretty strict, and it's really, really hard to make a case to be an independent contractor here, at least. It's like, so it's a challenge here, but I know I'm so glad you're able to do that and get those staff paid more. That's great.
The leisure instruction in El Paso, they have a lot of instructors. Like we have karate, we have yoga in the recreation center. So Zumba, line dance, and they have over, right now there are about 50 instructors. In a regular year, before COVID, probably was 120 instructors. So we had one person dedicated just for leisure instruction contracting.
Great. All right, we're at about 9:35, so we got about 20 minutes or so to talk about this other topic. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper in. There was some really thought-provoking stuff posted about burnout. As somebody who's gone through that very intensely myself, I wanted to just share a little bit, at least some experiences and some thoughts, and then just really kind of open up a discussion about it. Some thoughts I have. I'm really curious. I'm kind of actually working on a conference presentation. I'm not a psychologist at all, not a counselor. I've paid a lot of money to counselors over the last couple of years to work on some stuff, and I think I'm seeing correlations in our industry between some of the things that are in the area of like codependency and some fear of failure, and how those traits impact us as recreation professionals, that we have to, it's almost like I've seen an unhealthy ownership that's gone from, we care about our staff and we try to take care of them, to we're like it's not healthy to us of how we're trying to take care of them and make things work. So I've seen that. I think some of that, I'm curious to peel that onion back a little bit. It's probably about a year out before I'm going to be able to actually put something together in a cohesive way. But I think I see a lot of traits that line up with codependency in recreation professionals of that. I think we're all coming through a lot of trauma right now. I honestly think the amount of trauma that's been exposed to people that have worked on public facing jobs through the pandemic is just huge. I was watching last night a documentary on HBO about New York City and kind of how it's been a central hub from 9/11 through COVID and a lot of other social movements that have happened over the last 20 years, and just thinking through all of those and watching, like, we're still in COVID. But how it's impacted us, and how seeing that fear, that constant state of fear and unknown, is causing impacts to us. So I think some of that at all levels of organizations, and then I think lifeguarding it feels like lifeguarding is the hardest one to crack in terms of scheduling. And I think it's kind of turned into not a very good job because our organizations haven't kept up with pay, and the expectations we put on people versus what we're paying them doesn't match up. So we're trying to take people in these bad situations. I wouldn't say bad. I should not say that. It's less than ideal, where there's a disparagement of what the market will let them do for less skills elsewhere. So we're only getting people that are truly driven. So as coordinators, managers, supervisors, we're having to we care. So we invest more and more to try to keep things going. And then it just comes out of us. And so then we fall apart and we're not able to take care of staff as well as we'd like. And then we start losing staff and having turnover because it doesn't work, and we can't do it all. So I don't know. I think it's been interesting. I know that I'm personally getting to a little better place of trying to just leave things where they are, work hard, and learn to let it go and be okay with it. But I don't know if anybody else has thoughts about burnout that they're seeing or experiencing through the industry.
Well, I'll jump in. I'll echo everything you just said. I saw a similar correlation with the taking care. I was set up just before I got this new position in Wyoming. I was set up to do a small discussion at the Kansas Recreation and Parks Association conference. They had a breakout session that I was going to discuss, and my topic was managing middle management. And one of the topics that was coming into was taking care. I had three things I was going to discuss, and taking care was the last one I was going to hit on. And the thing that I feel like managers do is that they put all the work on themselves, and although they feel like they're a failure, and oftentimes that's coming from higher up, that, oh, it must be your fault because this isn't happening. So the taking care, not only taking care of your staff or helping with staff retention, but you need to be able to recognize and take care of yourself and communicate with your superiors, but also just be able to, like you said, because I had the same issue. I've had to learn to let things go, learn to go, you know what, I can't do it. I can't do it. I need to not worry about it. So, and just having those conversations and just having that back in your head, that it's like, okay, I need to take care of myself. Otherwise I'm going to burn out, or I'm going to be so stressed. And then it affects my work relationship with my staff, because I'm probably going to be a little bit more grouchy or a little bit more sharp or whatever have you. So, I mean, everything you just said, I would strongly echo that is the concern, but it's also, I would say, tying into, and it really depends on the facility based on all the comments that I saw because I was following that feed as well. I've worked at a facility where there was not much support from the higher ups. This facility, the situation I'm in is pretty rough right now. I've got a meeting set in 2 hours with my CEO. And I'm going to have a frank conversation with her. And fortunately, though, this facility, I feel like she'll listen.
Mhm.
I don't know what's going to come of it, but I don't know what to tell people that have the CEOs that or superiors that maybe aren't as willing to listen or work with you or whatever. I don't have a fix for that other than maybe finding a new job. But you got to have that communication with your superiors as well and let them know, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. That's I feel ya. I feel ya.
I attended a really good session at ORPA a couple years ago that talked about generations and communication and how there's a difference, you know, in terms of how you communicate. And one of the light bulbs that went off for me, because obviously I'm at such a vast number of years past the staff that I was managing, right? And it's like, you know, I come from the baby boomer stage. You did it till you die. You know, you stayed at work, did exactly what you're doing today, you know, being there, being the one, being the responsible one, being there. But one of the things I learned in that session was talking about this younger generation, you know, and what motivates them. And I can't remember all the things, but, you know, like my mother's generation had, you worked to work, you know, and to live. And as we've progressed down, one of the things that came to light was that the young people today really bank on relationships, and then going through COVID really impacted that because their relationships were cut off. And the thing about lifeguarding is it is not a social activity. It is a lone wolf out on the stand idea, right? And that's why we go nuts, because they want to chat when they rotate, because they're wanting that interaction. And so in thinking about that also is that they're more likely to be responsible to each other if we point it out to them. So for example, if somebody's late, you'll just say, well, you know, my generation goes, you're going to be out of here if you're late again. All right. Well, that doesn't work. And so what it is like, you were late today. And I have to tell you that Carol up on stand was in tears because she was so scared that somebody wasn't going to come and replace her. And she had things that she had to go for today. And she was willing to step up and take your place. But it wasn't fun for her at all. And kind of putting in that really personal framework. And then the other thing was to figure out times for them that could be social. So like the break room concept is important. My office sat outside the break room for 20 years. And I heard their interactions. I realized how important it was for them to talk to each other. And so whatever way you can build that in, even if it's after the shift and you get everybody an ice cream bar and say, great job today, guys, take a few minutes, I'll pay you to stay here and visit, whatever, you know, to get that interaction. So they start developing that bond with each other.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think that it's something to look at, just something to think about. But that's where I realized I had never made that connection of what they need, you know. And obviously I haven't worked with them since COVID, so I understand what you're saying, and but that changed that, you know. So many of them just sit in their rooms and they communicate by screen. You know, you could almost set up a weekly Zoom that they get on just to chat, just to talk about their week with each other. You know, I know that sounds silly, but
no, I see a lot of value in that, and just the social, the water cooler kind of thing, where it's just there. I know I've seen it gets a little squirrely sometimes, and there's some drama with it. I know there's like at any point there goes from 3 to like 6 different group chats between groups of people. And sometimes that goes a little sideways where, you know, somebody finds out they weren't in the group chat, or somebody sends a wrong message to the wrong group chat. But yeah, I don't know. I think one of the things that I also think that has been good for me to learn about is the reasonable boundaries, and communicating those to staff of like, hey, if it's urgent, I will help you. But if it's like, hey, I need this time off at this time, I'm not going to get back to you until I get back to work. Like, you need to understand that if it's not time sensitive, I really want you to send it through our messaging program, you know, or send me an email, because that way I can see it when I'm actually at work. If it's urgent, text me. And they've been doing okay about that, actually. And I think that's helped a little bit to just know that, like, just getting inundated with little things and all the time, you just never can turn off. So other thoughts on burnout and strategies and how we're getting here?
It probably goes against the grain of everybody when you hear let your lifeguards talk with the patrons, and you know, you think, oh, I don't want them distracted, I don't want them completely engaged. But we are such a low use facility here that I fully encourage my lifeguards to sit on the side of the pool, stick your feet in the water, and have a conversation. Because you're good, you got 2 people in the water, and if you're conversing with those 2 people, you have eyes on them 100% of the time. And it also makes that 5-hour shift go by a heck of a whole lot faster, because we don't have the ability to pull people in for an hour and a half or 2 hours at a time. We have longer shifts right now. I've got the lifeguard that I just broke earlier. He's my 5 a.m. guy, and he's here from 5 to noon, and he pulls that 5 days a week. And so every time I walk through, I aim to get here about 10 o'clock. He's already got a safety break at 7:30. But every time I walk through, I stop. We both look at the water. I sit and have a conversation with him real quick. Like, hey, how's it going? Everything going good? Hey, do you need a break right now? Kind of let you go to the bathroom. Like, they know that I'm there for them, that I'll cover for them. They know they've got that support system. So they may not see each other all the time because I've got one lifeguard in one pool and one lifeguard in the other pool, and they're in separate rooms. But I encourage them to have those conversations, to make sure that they're taking that time to connect with the patrons. And that's part of the YMCA's philosophy anyway, trying to connect with your patrons. So I know it kind of goes against traditional lifeguarding.
You're not alone. I do the exact same thing. I tell my staff, communicate with those patrons, because it's a Y thing. We need to be community involved. And as long as they're still scanning the water, there's like 4 people in the water, and they're talking to 2 of them, and the other 2 are standing right next to them listening. It's like, you've got 100% coverage. It's not a big deal. And it gets their social aspect out. And especially if they're a regular, they start building relationships, and it makes work fun, because they basically, a lot of times for me, it's like the grandma, like it's adoptive grandma. Hey, how was school today? Or how was, how's your dog? Or whatever. I mean, it's just, you're not alone. I encourage that as well. Highly encourage it.
And when you do that, the patrons know your lifeguard's names. Your lifeguard knows the patron names. And if a lifeguard is late or something doesn't go right and it affects the patrons, they're more likely to forgive because they know them on a little bit more of a personal level. So I do the same thing. I drive that customer service piece with my staff. I expect everybody to know the names of the patrons and to smile and say hi at the very minimum, and not to just sit there like a robot watching the water, because it gets really awkward when there's only 1 or 2 people in the water. Why wouldn't you pop down and say hi, or give them some feedback on their stroke, or just something to, you know, instead of sitting there. I've had complaints from people, the lifeguard just stared me down. That is their job. So yeah, there's a fine line for sure, but I do the same thing at my pool. It sounds a lot like Chelsea's. Not a lot of people in the morning, 8 people, 1 per lane. We know who they are, and so we're a little more personable.
I think it's great. And,
Oh,
and
I'd
just
say
like the
too.
obligation, Melissa, for your lifeguard, knowing their names, because they know those patrons. If they don't show up, they know who they're letting down.
Yeah,
And they know
creating
who
that
they're going to
personal-
hear it from.
Good
Well, we
personal
call them
connection.
too.
Yeah, I mean, well, the nice side of that coin then is now we're also hearing from patrons saying, "Oh my gosh, this lifeguard comes in every morning and he is the best part of my day. He's
Yep.
always got a smile on his face." Like, it's making their time here that much more enjoyable as well. Like, it's a tit for tat kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say too, on the other side of all of that, as far as what I do to support them too, is some of these kids I was noticing they're not packing food and they were going to our vending machines or they were ordering DoorDash. And so some of them don't know how to manage their money on that side of things. They're like, "Oh, I just spent $30 on a DoorDash meal." And I'm like, "And you worked 3 hours to get that." And they're just like, "Oh." They kind of start putting two and two together. So what I started doing in my office, especially with how hot it was here in Oklahoma for the summer, I kept ice pops in our little mini fridge, and I keep like Pop-Tarts and things all stacked in here. In fact, I have them in that big bin right there, and then I have a little bin that I pull out, and it's just always stocked with food, so they can grab a snack while they're running around. And that also, just that extra burst of energy in your system, forces them to get up, to stop sitting in the chair. So they get up and they have to come over to the office and they grab it out of the office and they're walking around and they're eating and they're drinking and they're, even though it looks like, I don't want them to eat a full meal in the middle of everything and not be able to swim, but I try and keep them hydrated and fed. They're like my kids. So I'm old enough to be their mom, so they are my kids.
Yeah. The snack basket is a big one, and popsicles are the cheapest like investment in lifeguards I've ever made. I was gonna chime in and add, I think one of the things that is, this conversation with our staff, we've got very like, hi, very like caring and stuff. But part of that, I think, is also accountability and holding people accountable, because you're also doing a disservice to the people that aren't carrying their weight if you're not holding them accountable. And that's as hard as that can be sometimes. I had somebody that I really trust and listen to a lot talked about discipline as kind of breaking it down into like discipling. I don't want to get into tangents about that, but you're training them, you are holding them to a standard. And that kind of attitude, of appropriate and caring, and bank on that, as I maybe it was just me, but earlier in my career, I would bank on, like, I would, yeah, but I want to help them. I want to take care. We can fix this. There's a couple parts that are missing. One, that individual's accountability. And then two, like getting to a point to say, you know what, I do give a rip and I am trying, but there is points, and that point's probably a little closer than I want it to be, but I'm going to have to start engaging harder at those points sooner, for everybody else's sanity.
One of the complaints that I hear too, that I think that we have to think about, is that sometimes when you have those responsible guards, they get overused.
Mm-hmm.
They're always the one that's willing to come in. Well, pretty soon you burn that person out. So you have to really be sure that you are honoring them stepping up time and time again, and figure out a way to reward them for that, and to make sure that, whoever's calling them in on the schedule isn't just picking them first because they're always the one that will do it, or the one that'll answer a text, right? Because I think that's where we can lose some really good staff, just because they get tired, they get overused.
Yeah, it's the concept of the emotional bank account. Even though we may not be, as the organizational leaders, doing the withdrawals, their coworkers are.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it's a hard line to balance and manage that. But if we're seeing this person's always coming in and always getting called in, like Christine said, I think we do need to get probably a little more involved than I know that I have been in the past.
when I have staff like that I know they're coming in a lot and doing that, if I hear word that they need to shift off, I'm like, I'll get that figured out for you. Don't worry about it. And that makes their day because they don't have to stress about it anymore. Because it's like, and I tell them, you've done a lot for me. You've been coming in, you've been filling in, helping out staff. I'll do you solid. I'll stress on this. You don't worry about it. And it does, they recognize that. And from what I can gather.
Yeah.
I think also by that same token, I have some kids that they said yes just because the boss asked them. And so me giving them permission to be like, it's okay to say no, that you can't do this.
Yep.
And them kind of realizing that they can tell me, oh, I can't do that. You're not going to get mad at me because I say I can't, because you're the boss asking me if I can. I'm like, look, this is outside of your regular schedule. I'm asking if you can cover a shift, but if you've already got plans, you do you. It's not a problem. I'm just asking you because you happen to be here while I'm trying to figure this out, like, or you're one of my reliable people. But if you need the permission to say no, like, please don't feel. And we finally gotten over those barriers where they feel like they can say, I can't do that. And I'm glad that we've created that space that they feel comfortable and safe being able to do that.
So the thought I just had is, I wish we could take this audio and then stick it, the exact conversation we've had, and have it presented by people with PhDs and all the titles, and then have our bosses listen to it. because I'm listening to this and like, yeah, this is how we stop burnout. And then it's like, oh, it'd be nice if somebody brought me a snack. You bring me a popsicle, I'd be really happy.
Getting in the car now.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you guys. I don't know if anybody has any other closing thoughts. We've got about 3 minutes left about burnout or anything else. Just go ahead, Christine.
Just the one thing I also thought about with that is that, I remember one time when I picked up the hose to do the deck with a guard, they were like in shock. Right? And they went, you're going to do this? And I went, you have to tell me how to do this. You do this all the time. I don't know how to do this. I want you to teach me.
Yeah.
Or somebody has an accident in the bathroom, I'd be the first one up to go clean that up. Because I set the example, and I let them know that no, it's not fun for any of us. None of us want to do this, but you know what? It's got to be done, and I'll do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I think it just set them up for success more to jump in and do it too.
Yep.
It's that don't ask someone to do something that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. And so we try really hard to create that here. And I definitely try. Because I cover lifeguard shifts myself. So if I'm going to ask them to do the daily cleaning checklist, I'm going to be doing it myself when I come through. And I might even go a little further and do somebody else's shift for the day as well on that list. Yeah. Stuff needs to get done. So why not?
Yep. No, and it's also a good check to make sure you're giving them reasonable amount of stuff to do.
Yeah.
Like to just check in, like, can we actually get this done in this rotation, this down rotation, or this, safety break or whatever. So great. Well, thank everybody for this conversation. I really appreciate it and want to keep it going on. I think next week I should be able to be at the normal office to facilitate it with the Q&A. And then again, I'm going to really try to work on getting a couple speakers that have a lot of domain expertise on diversity to come in, and we'll try to pull some questions together in advance and have a really great discussion. So thank you all. If anybody has anything else, you can always email or text me. If you have topic ideas and stuff, let me know. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. So thank you all.
Good weekend.
Bye.